talking with Dr. Bill Harris about omega-3 and omega-6. Earlier you said we consume enough omega-6 but need more omega-3. How do we know how much we have in terms of omega-3 and if we need to keep increasing that level? How do we find that out?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something I've been very interested in lately. By measuring blood levels. That's really the only way to know how much omega-3 you've got on board. And we developed a test some years ago, which we call the omega-3 index, which is measured in whole blood or red blood cells, when we can do it on a finger stick drop of blood. And that test tells you how much omega-3 you have in your red blood cells, which is a good marker of the rest of the body. And that test is being used more and more because it's the only objective way of knowing if you're getting enough omega-3 is to actually measure it. And we consider the omega-3 index very much like a risk factor in the sense that we all know that cholesterol is a risk factor. So high cholesterol is bad. You go to your doctor, you find out your cholesterol level is bad, you do something about it. You either change your diet, you take a drug, whatever, to get the level down to a safe range. Exactly the same story with the omega-3, except it's the reverse, because you want to have a high level instead of a low level. And so we find most people in America have levels that are, we would call deficient. The level is what we call 4%, which is kind of hard. So that's how much omega-3, 4% of the fatty acids in the red cell are omega-3. So we call it the omega-3 index of 4%. The target healthy value is around 8%, twice as high as where most Americans are. And a population that actually lives that way, that has high omega-3s their whole life, is the Japanese. And they're an interesting study because the Japanese live longer. They live about 4 years longer on average than Americans do. They're number 5 in longevity in the world, America, despite tsunamis and radiation and things like that. Historically, they are very close to the number 1 in longevity on the planet. America is the 50th place. We're way down the scale. And the omega-3 levels in Japan are over 9%. We think 8's a target. They're living up at 9. They have very little cardiovascular disease in Japan, despite the fact that they smoke more than we do. So you'd think they'd have more heart disease. They have rampant high blood pressure, a lot of salt in their diet, should have more heart disease, but they have much less. And the fellows who have really studied this really think it's the omega-3 levels in the blood that are giving them their benefit from cardiovascular disease. So that's, in assessing what your or my omega-3 status is, you got to do a blood test, and you got to do a standardized blood test because you get different numbers from different laboratories.
Should this be something, when you talk about that range, the 4%, 8%, that hopefully is as common as everybody knowing the number 200 when you talk about cholesterol? I mean,
glad you know that number.
Well, you know, but that's pretty
point.
common, yeah.
Exactly, and that's what our goal is, to have this lab test, the omega-3 test, be part of every standard laboratory test. When you go for your doctor for a physical, you get your cholesterol done, you get your blood pressure done, you get your blood glucose done, you get your omega-3 done. And that's where we think it ought to be. And it has a lot of advantages. Number one, it's a very easy risk factor to treat. I mean, if it's out of whack, which it is for most Americans, getting it fixed is, you don't need to take any drugs. You don't need to go on a steep exercise program to lose weight. None of that stuff. You just have to increase your omega-3 intake, and your levels will go up. Now, how high they go up depends. It's different for every person. There's a different response. But by and large, it's a very, what the doctors would call very actionable risk factor. You can do something about it.